Hey, welcome back to our study this week. We're in Colossians 3, 5 through 11. We're talking about putting off the old. So what does that mean? What are we talking about? Well, let's get into it today. We're talking about pleasures and possessions. That's the first thing we need to put off. We find that in verses 5 through 7. Let's begin with verse 5. It says, when Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. Remember, that's what he said previously. That's what he just said in the section right before what we're looking at this week. So he put off that. Well, what is it? What does that mean? What are we to do then? If we are going to appear with glory and our life happens, what are we to do in the meantime, though? Well, if all that is said in verses 1 through 4 of Colossians chapter 3, all that's true about us, then how do we live? If you're not sure, or if you know it's not true about you, that those verses 1 through 4 are not about you, that verses 1 through 4 you're not sure about, if that applies to you, then today is the day of salvation. Just cry out to God to have mercy on you, and he promises he will. And then you turn away from your sin, and you put your trust in Jesus alone. For those of us who have done that, and we are trusting in the Lord, then we must obey this command. It says, put to death what is earthly in you. Now, this is not a popular message at all. This will not win you or me any friends. This usually will not fill the church unless the Spirit is working in the hearts of many in one place at one time. Usually it ends up thinning the church. But this is the truth that we need to hear. This command to kill the earthly is usually not pleasant because most of us want what is earthly. Most of what is earthly feels good to us. It's enjoyable for at least a time. It can give us instant feelings of gratification, yet it always leaves us wanting more. So this command to kill is violent. We are talking about execution, killing a part of ourselves that has been with us since conception. So what specifically are we killing? Well, Paul gives us some examples. First is sexual immorality, or porneia, he says here. It's a plural form of porneia, which is any kind of sexual immorality. So you're supposed to kill sexual immoralities in you. This is obviously where we get the English word pornography. This word means anything sexual in nature that is outside the marriage covenant between a biological male and a biological female. Everything else falls into this category, like looking at porn, premarital sex, adultery, homosexuality. Everything falls into this porneia idea. Any sexual act committed outside the bounds of biological male-female marriage is to be put to death in us. Next comes impurity or uncleanness. This is moral impurity that comes from lust and is several times mentioned in the New Testament. It's coupled with the idea of greed as well. It's also applied to impure motives. So, where sexual immorality is more about physical acts, the thoughts that lead to those acts are impurity and must be put to death as well. Or the idea of going after something, wanting more and more and more, things that don't actually belong to you or you don't have authorization to have. Like in greed, you don't have the authorization to have all that money, but yet you want more and more and more. You can't get enough. Same thing with sexual impurity, sexual immorality. Same idea. So, next on the chopping block is passion. That is raw emotions which are not guided by God. In our modern use of the word passion, that can be a good thing, but in the New Testament it's evil. It's pure emotionalism. It's feelings without thought or self-control. Since self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, passion really is the opposite. It is the lack of control. It's where you give in to all your emotions. You're just running on emotion. He says you got to put that to death. You got to kill that. We must control our emotions and we can't let them run wild. If we allow our emotions to control us and we let them run crazy, then we're We're opposing God in that. Passion must go to the chopping block. It must be beheaded. We got to cut that passion off. I can spend a lot of time talking about this. This is a huge problem in the church because people are obsessed with passion. They're obsessed with like, oh, I just want to feel. It's all about feeling. Like, I got to feel something. It's like, but passion's got to die. He says, put to death that passion. You got to put to death those emotions that are out of control. Get them under control. Put to death the rapid, raw emotion, unguided by God. You got to have that under control. The problem is that in the church, we've been training people in the church for decades now that you should desire raw emotion. Like, you go to the worship service, you should just let loose and woo, everything's pouring out of me. I can't control it. When I worship God, I just can't control it. He says here, you got to put that to death. We've taught people the complete opposite. And that is horrible. That is sinful. And now we're reaping the sowing of that, and it's not good. Because people, all they want is like, I just want to feel. If I don't feel good, then it wasn't good. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter what the reality is. If I don't feel good about it, then it's not good. That's how people operate nowadays. That's how they feel about the church. I don't feel good about the church, so the church's not good. Whether it's doing everything right biblically, it is on point, it is seeking theological correctness, it is, people are loving each other. It doesn't matter, because if I don't feel good, it's not good. If I don't like what you're saying, it's not good. And so it's automatically just killed. Everything else is just destroyed. And it's horrible. But we train people to think this way. And then to go against that, you take flack for that. I've taken quite a bit myself. It's like, well, you do know it can be done a different way. Well, of course it can be done a different way. I could give in to your passions, but your passion's got to die. That's what he says. So we need to get that right. But self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. We can and we should and we must control our emotions. We can't let raw emotion happen in our lives. The next two are evil desire and covetousness. Now, they're really two sides of the same idea. Evil desire refers to wanting things that are forbidden by God, while covetousness means you want more than what you have and what God has already deemed best for you. This is idolatry because you're putting something greater than God. He's like, well, I know God has given me this, but I want more, or I want this thing that I don't have. Like, the Bible talks about coveting your neighbor's wife. Like, you don't have, maybe you already have a wife, but you want this other wife. Or maybe you don't have a wife. That's what God has given to you, no wife, but then you want that wife. That's not yours. And so there's the evil desire is like, God has told you, no, you can't have that. You can't have these things. These are forbidden. This is against the law of God. You can't do this. Then there's other things that are lawful, but yet are not given to you, like covetousness. That's what covetousness is. Like, these things are lawful to have, but that's not for me to have. That one's not for me to have. Like in the wife issue. It's not wrong to have a wife, but to have that one, it is. So then you're putting yourself above God, and that's idolatrous. So you've created another God to whom you answer to. That might be the thing, or it might be yourself. But those have to be executed too. You have to kill that. Why is it so crucial that we kill these things in us? Because he says in verse 6, the wrath of God is coming. The wrath of God is coming down upon these things. So if you talk about the emotionalism thing, wrath of God is coming because of that. Let's not make it, if you go back over that list, sexual immorality, wrath of God is coming because of that. Your rampant emotionalism, wrath of God is coming because of that. Your evil desire and covetousness, wrath of God coming. So all these things are drawing the wrath of God to it. Many manuscripts have the phrase, upon the sons of disobedience, which is the same exact phrase that Paul uses in Ephesians 5:6. So whether it was just copied over there or it was both there, either way, it's talking about that wrath of God is coming upon. Like, Christians, lovers of God, don't do those things, right? Those are things that those people are putting to death. So in the sons of disobedience in the rest of the world, those people are going after those things, and that's why the wrath of God is coming down upon them. So these things are why those who are disobedient will spend eternity in the wrath of God. If these things bring the wrath of God, then we should hold nothing back in order to put these things to death in us. Like, if my problems here are causing the wrath of God to come, why would I want anything to do with them, right? This should strike a holy fear in us. Do you mean that I'm doing things that God will punish others for all eternity, is what you're asking? Yes. Yes, you are. Now hurry, hunt them down, and bring them to justice. Because remember, this was you. That's what he says in verse 7. These are not you anymore. You used to walk and live in them. Sexual immorality was your life. Passion, that's where you used to live. Evil desire and covetousness was your home. Not anymore. You are with God now, and those old ways have no place with you, in you, around you, anything. Don't give them any quarter. Don't invite them along on this new walk. Kill them, he says. Put them to death. They don't have power over you. Porn addiction, coveting, desiring things God told you not to, sexual promiscuity, uncontrolled emotional outbursts, are all these things can be overcome because they don't have power. That's what you once were. But that's once were, not what you are now. So why would Paul tell us to put them to death if it were not so? If we're not able to do that? If we're not able to kill them? We can, and we should. We got to put those earthly things onto the chopping block and cut their heads off, put them in the gallows, whatever metaphor you want to use, put them in the chair, give them the lethal injection, crucify them. Those things have got to be executed and put to death. So that's what we need to do. That's the idea of when you come to Christ. That's what happens. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And I know that's not popular, but it is what it is. So come back next time. We'll look at verses 8 through 11. Talk about evil relationships, evil relations that we have. So that's next time.